Well, hello. How's everyone doing this December? Gold, yes. I hear some exciting pin drops as far as plans for your holiday break, winter break, whatever you want to call it. I heard Banff from somebody. I'm super jealous. It has been on my bucket list for a number of years. So wishing you all a restful and restorative and celebratory holiday season. I can actually think of like no better time to wrap up a conversation on emotional intelligence than December, when we're, both excited but also a little overwhelmed by all that is in front of us and maybe what we have planned for the year ahead. Raise of hands, how many of you have had a New Year's resolution in the past? Just some, or a goal, and how many of those, keep them raised if they are still in fruition today? Yeah, okay. So you're in common ground. About 80 to 90% of New Year's resolutions do not make it past February for most folks. That is somewhat the work that I do, at least at Carnegie Mellon. I help people think about what is something that they are trying to attain, and then what are the ways that they can get closer and closer to that goal. So what we know from the research is that there are 3 primary things that are needed in order to turn something from a goal to something that actually comes to fruition. The first is actual motivation to do it, right? So there are so many times where doctors will say to somebody, you need to do this in order to save your life. And even that is not enough, right? There has to be some sort of interior motivation to want to do or change that behavior. We also need the actual skills to do said thing, right? I would love to be a millionaire, but I don't necessarily have the immediate, acquired skills to do that. So yes, it's a lovely dream, but it will likely stay in that space unless new opportunities emerge. And then the third, which I think is most important, is that we need an environment that triggers said behavior. Right? I think that's the piece that a lot of us miss. It's why accountability partners can be really helpful in having goals, right? We're far more likely, for instance, to go to the gym if we know somebody is waiting for us there. So that's a little bit about how I hope to wrap us up this month, right? We have talked about a lot. We'll review it quickly just to make sure that we all have that shared language again. It's kind of fresh in our minds. But most importantly, what I thought we could do is spend a bulk of our time together actually thinking about what is going to create the environmental triggers here at Gateway to continue to help you practice these skills, right? Because at the end of the day, if we're not in a shared space where this feels welcomed and something that people are inviting into the daily conversation, into the daily norms, then it's going to be difficult. It's going to be like, oh yeah, that was fun, and now I forgot it a year later, right? Like most things. So that being said, we're just going to do a quick recap, right? Emotional intelligence is part intrapersonal, so it's this idea that we are self-aware, we have an understanding of our emotions, where those emotions are. We do some self-regulating, so we talked about how we manage our energy, right? Like what is draining our capacity. So again, draining isn't bad. It just simply means it's using a lot of our energy. And so then how do we oscillate into things that feel restorative? So we have some balance or some semblance of both energy gains and drains throughout our day. That's what makes a fulfilling life. We then think about how to regulate that by understanding our zones of resilience, right? So if I'm in a zone of integration, I know that I'm using all of my resources. I'm essentially firing on all cylinders, right? I have a sense of the stressors that are in front of me, but I feel resourced to manage those stressors, versus feeling like we are in a zone of chaos or a zone of rigidity, right? So wondering how much this has shown up for you in these last 2 months of thinking about where am I and what might pivot me back to that zone of resilience or zone of flourishing more often. Any questions about those first two, right? Just this idea of energy management and zones of resilience. These feel pretty intuitive, right? And then we talked about the interpersonal, right? This idea of how we move in our relationships. And so how oftentimes, if we have a high level of support and also a high level of accountability for the people in our lives, then we're in the with box with them, right? We are co-creating relationships that feel really restorative, that hold each other to high standards, but also offer a level of care and support to feel valued, right? Like that it's important that we work on these relationships. And so when we think about that professionally, right, it's in spaces where we feel like we have a seat at the table and our values, our ideas, are true contributions to the group, right? Versus being in a 4 or a 2 box, right, where we either enable people, we become really permissive because we have really high support but low expectations, or the vice versa, which is we have really high expectations but no support. And that's the 2, right? It kind of feels like we're walking on eggshells. So even notice, maybe, in your family dynamics this upcoming holiday season, right, how many times are you in the with box with the people that you surround yourself by? So the question, I think, becomes like, these are all great concepts, but how? How do we do this more often than not? And I have really appreciated the work of Rasmus Hugard and Jacqueline Carter. Carter I have been watching for a really long time. She does some excellent books on personal management, but she got together with Hugard to really think about how organizations scale up and create these environments that I talked about, right? Ones that enable psychological safety, ones that allow you to like bring your best self to the table, like want to hold you accountable on that level, but do it in a really sincere, values-driven way. So they interviewed over 5,000 leaders within different sectors of employment, and the 3 things that continually came up for them were these 3 C's. And I thought that's what we're going to put into practice today. So one is centeredness. They are really intentional about being present for the environments that they are in, right? For the teams that they are supporting. So it's this mantra of be here now, right? Like really focus on what is this current environment in which I'm sitting. I'm not resting on the laurels of what used to happen in this company or what used to drive motivation, but I'm really showing up for today's generation and this particular group of people. They are courageous, meaning they are going to prioritize courage over comfort. So if there's difficult conversations to be had, they're going to share them in a timely way. They're going to be really transparent about what they need from that team, right? So again, it's that high level of accountability. They're going to say the hard things. They're just going to say it in a really human-centered way. And then they're going to stay curious, right? They're not going to pretend that they have all the answers. They're going to ask and continue to ask questions about how can this be more relational over transactional? How can I do a better job at understanding my team? It's what a lot of new recent books are talking about when they say mattering in work environments, right? So how do we feel like we both have value and that we add value to the team, right? So how do I feel like I'm noticed? How do people affirm the gifts that I bring to this organization? And then how do I feel needed, right? Which is rare, actually, in a lot of companies, right? A lot of people would report that they don't feel like they matter, that they're just another number. I would argue Gateway, even through this series and many other cultural traditions that you have here in this organization kind of continue to espouse that people matter, right? That we want to know you more than just the work that you offer to the team. So again, that mantra for curiosity is clear as kind, right? To pick up a Brené Brown saying. So from here, right, if we do this, right, if we get to a place where we are taking care of one another, we're in the with box. When we're not in the with box, we're willing to come back and have a courageous conversation about like, oh, that didn't go the right way that I thought it was going to. I'd love to come back to that, right? So that people can rebuild their sense of trust. When harm is done, right, you're able to restore back to a community that feels caring and collected. If we do that, we create psychological safety. Right? So think about organizations or experiences that you've had in the past that have felt very psychologically safe, that have felt like you've mattered, right? That you walk in and that there's always a seat at the table for you, that people care about your opinions, your feedback, your gifts that you bring, right? Think about what that feels like, where you can honor your mistakes. And in opposition to that, I imagine we all have examples of when we have not felt psychologically safe in a space, right? That you walk into a room and you're like, ooh, I don't know if my opinion feels like something that I can share in this space. Or maybe not my full expression, right, of who I am and what I bring to the table. So if we want Gateway to continue as a collective to move to this place where things feel really psychologically safe, we got to be able to admit our mistakes. We got to be able to iterate, to not only listen to the most vocal voices or the majority opinions, but rather create space for some of those outliers, right? Because sometimes the most creative, innovative solutions come from things that the primary group cannot see. And so that's what I think we can continue to flourish. But that creates and is created by everyone in this room, right? It's not just simply a top-down approach. It's how we greet each other in the hallways. It's how we get to know each other as humans, right? It's looking up from our desks or our work and actually greeting people with their name, or, you know, the difference between saying like, hey, how you doing? And like, hey, how was that concert that you went to this last weekend, right? There's a difference in how we can affirm what we know about each other and why we care to know those things about each other. Any questions in this space? All right, lots to think about, right? Lots to chew on. So here's the question I'm gonna ask of each of you to reflect on silently before we come together as a team. In what ways have you felt like you have mattered to date here at Gateway? I know you're all relatively new, but what's one way, from the time that you were recruited to the time that you were seated in these chairs, have you felt like, oh, I have value here, right? There's a reason that I am here. Could have been a really nice callback to get you to interview. It could just be this particular growth and development series within your first year, right? Like, think about one way that you feel or have felt seen and heard here at Gateway. And then the second question I'm going to ask you, which I think is equally as important, is what is one way you have made somebody else here at Gateway feel seen, heard, or valued? I like to think of this in 3 buckets, right? I think of when people feel like they matter, they've been noticed in some capacity, right? Like you know something about them beyond just the work that they produce. Something about the way in which they do their work or the gift that they bring to the table, right? So noticing. So we can notice in a lot of different ways. We can notice by when we notice their energy shift, right? We now have talked about energy gains and drains, right? So we can begin to see how people oscillate over the course of their day. And when we see that people are really drained in their energy, right, noticing that and then offering them something to support, right, is a lovely way to notice, right? We can affirm, right? So once we know something about someone, or lots of things about them, we can begin to encourage them to bring more of that to the table, right? So if somebody has a really creative way of going about problem solving, right, to be able to say that to them, like, hey, I saw that you took this really complex thing and made me totally think about it in a different way, right? To be able to affirm that skill that they have is a lovely way that we can take the noticing to the next level. And if we really want to get good at this, right, which is something that I'm really thinking about how I work on, is we show their need, right? We show their indispensability. Meaning, not only do I believe you have really important gifts to bring to the table, but I could not have done this particular project without you. Like without your mastermind on X, right, this project would have been, dead in the water. think about this a lot as I round through the end of this fiscal year, right? Like, what about the projects that I worked on who were the people that were instrumental in making those happen? And then how am I paying respect and gratitude to those individuals, right? We can often call that laddering. So if this is the vision of Gateway, all of these things needed to happen in order to get to that vision. So what is the task here? And who are all the people who then did this task in order for these people to do this task? And so on until you get to the bigger picture, right? Like, that's how we create ecosystems that feel like people want to be there and they know why they are there, right? And it goes back to what I shared earlier, right? Because we are really present for each other, right? We're not just machines letting AI do all the work. We're really noticing each other. We're affirming that work and those talents that they bring, right? That are not automated, that really do require some energy and capacity, and we are showcasing the need that we have. So I share all of this a little bit as inspiration for us to get into this next sector, which is where I would love to see your ideas come to life, right? So we're going to use a framework to do this next group kind of collective using design thinking. Is anyone familiar with design thinking? Use it in your work? Okay, great. So you can help me kind of bring this to life, right? So Stanford D School is pretty renowned in their design thinking framework, right? A lot of people have adopted their model. And it comes with 5 stages, which I have always appreciated, right? So the first is that we empathize. And empathize is this idea that we can sit in the shoes of the user. And the good news is you are all the users, so that'll be pretty easy to do today, right? Like, you know what it's like to work and live and play here at Gateway. And so use that, right? And we'll give you additional prompts to kind of put you in that seat. The second is that you begin to define, right? You start thinking about, like, what's the current state of this particular prompt that we will give you, right? Like, what is usually happening in this space? So state the needs of the group, right? Sometimes that's going to be you, sometimes that might be your clients, but think about what are the needs that are in full realization, right, with this group. The fun part is where you get to ideate. So instead of thinking about the what is, you start asking what if questions. So what if Gateway looked more like a laboratory than a traditional organization? What if failures got really celebrated and in fact they were promoted, right, as a way to learn and grow through experiences? What if we could really honor each other in ways that felt authentic to that person, right? So I know how I'm motivated, but what if I knew that the person beside me was motivated in a different way? And what if I use that to drive behavior, right? Or to drive our relationships getting stronger and deeper? So you think about it through a brainstorming session, right? Nothing is off the table. Don't worry about whether it feels like you can afford it or if time is a barrier, right? We're going to get rid of some of those things that sometimes stagnate really good ideas. We're going to put every idea that you have on a Post-it note. So on your desk, you'll see Post-it notes in front of you. Every idea gets a Post-it note, right? So what we want to be able to do is ultimately get to an affinity diagram, right? Where all of your ideas are showing up in space where you can really think about it collectively and begin to see themes emerge, right? And this is where I think the what wow comes in. You start to say, like, oh, a lot of us are thinking this could be a really cool way to incentivize or move things forward, right? So that is what you're going to share out with the collective group, right? So we're going to break you down into teams. I'm going to give you a prompt. You're going to go through the 5 stages, and I'll rewrite them on the board so that you can see both the prompt and the different stages of the design process. And I want you to actually take some time doing this, right? Because I do think, yes, the first things are going to come pretty easily, and then you're going to get a little stuck of like, oh, well, this is where we are, right? I'm going to ask you to push past the stuck moment to get a little wild and maybe a little on the edges with where your ideas could go, right? So that we get everything on the table that could possibly be there. And then we'll share back with the group so that ultimately you can walk away from this not feeling like, yeah, that was a really good session and I'll forget it in a month from now, but you actually have some really, as a group, you've decided these are the ways that we are going to drive culture forward here at Gateway, right? Like these are the ones that we're going to want to prototype and really see what comes as a result. Does anyone have any questions? All right. So here are your challenges. So challenge number 1 is increasing connections at Gateway to enhance community culture, right? So how might you get more curious and open with each other, right? How you get to learn more about who's in the room. How might you show appreciation and gratitude for each other, right? And how do you motivate people to do not just the work, but get connected, right? Really understand who and what is exciting around them. Challenge number 2 is adapting communication within project teams, right? So project teams always could stand to have additional development, right? How do you create a really strong team with one another? Which means, how do you engage in more effective channels of feedback? How do you increase empathy for teams' needs and expectations? And I would even go further as to say, like, how do you increase compassion for teams' needs, right? Empathy is an emotion. Compassion is an action, right? So yes, we can feel for someone, but when we offer compassion, we are asking to figure out how can we help, right? So we're gonna move that in the right direction by supporting each other with your needs and expectations. And then ultimately, you know, we can do a lot virtually, but it's even better when we can do it face to face. So how do we increase those connections where we really get to see and hear each other? Because I would argue that's actually how we get a tenor of the room, right? That's that social awareness of emotional intelligence, right? I don't know how you're feeling if you just sent me an email, but I can understand it a little bit better if you're standing in front of me. Third challenge is how to enhance relationships with clients, right? So you have a wide variety of clients, so how do you build that trust? How do you want them coming back again and again? How do you showcase your care and concern, right? So that you're not just another engineering company, right? Project management company, that you are the company that they want to be working with. And how do you do that in a way that really centers the human approach to the work? And ultimately, number 4, how do you encourage team members to venture outside comfort zones, right? We all know what we are good at and what we're comfortable at, but how do we dip our toes in waters and new learning and experience in ways that feels different, right? That feels distinctly like Gateway is helping me do this, right? Helping me learn new things. How do you create opportunities for folks to try on different roles? How do you even learn about colleagues that you haven't met yet, right? What are some of those strategies you can employ? And what ways can you incentivize these new skills and expectations? All right, so everyone has seen the challenges. You're welcome to have ideas on all 4 of them, but I think for the sake of time, what I'm going to do is divide you into groups so that you can focus on one, so that there's real strong time invested in one particular group. But we will have the ability to come back and hear from each of the groups. So if you have additional ideas that you would want to share in relation to that theme, that's a great time where once they present, you can add some additional ideas to the table. All of this is going to go back to Gateway leadership, and that isn't meant to make anyone nervous. It's about to say, like, they actually want to hear your feedback, right? They want to hear your ideas. This is how new initiatives start, right? New ways of being and working and doing together start. So I think if we just take these 2 tables and make you challenge number 1, then we can take these 3 tables for 2, these for 3, and our final tables for 4. Does that sound good? We're gonna give you a full 15 minutes to like really work as a group. So if you don't know each other just yet, I would really like you to start with introductions, right? Get to know each other, right? Model what you want these conversations to be doing. And then you can get to the idea making, right, where you add every new idea to a post-it. You can then take one sector of the wall to like throw up all of your organization, and I'll give you at least a 5-minute warning where I'll say, hey, now's the time where you might want to collect your ideas, add some themes, right, or things that you want to share out with the collective group, and decide if you want one person sharing that out or if you want to make it that equitable where everyone gets a little bit of the pie, right, to share. Does that sound good? Does anyone have any questions? Okay, sounds good. You can get started. So if you, I don't know how you want to bring your tables together, but you can circle around collectively. All right, in the interest of time, I'm going to ask us to share out so we can offer this collective wisdom to the group, maybe add some additional ideas to your team's prototyping. So if you all could take a seat, it doesn't have to be at your table, but just make sure everyone can see each other. And then I just ask whoever is speaking to just speak loud enough so that everyone can hear you, because I think these are going to be really good ideas. Does any team want to go first?
Sean wants to go first.
I have to say, I actually was hoping Challenge 4 would go first, right? Because it is a little bit about like venturing out of your comfort zone. So like model the way for us, Sean.
So I think a big one that we started off with was like just making eye contact and smiling to like other coworkers when you're walking by, because we were noting that it just feels negative to have someone just avoid eye contact when you walk past them. Another thing, sort of trying to break the ice before meetings. Like I have a project manager who we all share a fun fact before we start like getting into the work of it all, and that's just an easy way to kind of get the ball rolling and segueing into kind of the deeper topics.
Absolutely, and what I love about that is there's some centeredness happening there, right? Like everyone is now in the group together because you all had to do this shared task to begin with, so.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, it really connects us all. Another thing we said was adding job interests and focuses onto workers' nameplates, because it's easy to kind of just walk past someone, but you don't really know exactly what their focus is here or the kind of work that they do. And that would be helpful if you're trying to go out of your comfort zone and wanting to learn a new skill. It would be easier to see someone who does that, and that's kind of more of an active process of like searching up on the PDPP database to try to find that, rather than like just walking by and seeing that they're doing something you're interested in.
Yeah, I love that. And what I love about that is it's the noticing, right? Like, oh, I noticed that you do this thing, right? I would love to learn more about that, right? It's a way to both learn more about your colleagues while also noticing a skill that they bring to the table.
Yeah. Another thing that we have about noticing is having more recognition of certifications. Like if someone gets a certification, kind of just maybe putting that on the TVs or on the Twig, like that could go a long way in terms of getting other people to go out of their comfort zone and getting more certifications to round out their skill sets. We also had an emphasis on sitting one-on-one with people you're interested on getting to learn like more about their work. So that's like one of the best ways, using PDPP hours to just shadow them would be the best way to kind of get the ball rolling on learning a new task and getting outside of your comfort zone.
Love these ideas. I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads as Sean was sharing. Are there additional ideas you would love to put forth for encouraging team members to venture outside? Yeah.
I think going off of the adding a job interest on the nameplate, I literally said that in this group too, even though it wasn't really our thing. But I feel like most people don't update their PDPP as often as like other people. So it'd be nice to just have like maybe like a title, be like, oh, like project manager, focus geology, focus traffic, focus landscape design, focus like landscape architecture, like I don't know, different things like that that would definitely help.
Absolutely. Love, thank you. Please add that to your list and we'll make sure that Katie has these all. Any other? Katie, do you want to share what you do with those notes?
Yeah. So this is the third. Makes me feel like 5 years I've known you. This is the third time Angie's presented to the Growth and Development series. She was the first presenter actually. So after this exercise each quarter, I compile all of these notes based on the challenge, and then I've shared them with Jason. So this is obviously anonymous. I don't know this. He knows he knows the audience. But I have a very transparent conversation with Jason for 30 minutes after this session to share back what you all have written down. So it's not for naught. Like the what wows really are things that we do discuss quarterly. Yearly.
And what I appreciated about a lot of the suggestions that you made, these are not hard suggestions, right? Like these are things that you're already doing, right? So like nameplates are something you already have. Adding something to the nameplates would not be a big ask, right? Adding something to the twig or other ways that you message, right, would not be a hard thing. So I love that there is really easy ways to prototype the suggestions that you just offered. So great job, team number 4. Nice work. Which team would like to go next? Yeah, team number 1.
Yes, we were increasing connections, a gateway to enhance community and tribe culture. We, as an overarching theme, realized it takes a lot of personal initiative to just be open and social. So we kind of brainstormed ways that if you aren't as open, like how could Gateway help? Okay. So for people that have been here longer, maybe just making personal introductions to other people, like actually introducing others to each other. Or if you have someone you're closer with, introducing them to people that are just here, I think would be really helpful. How might we show appreciation for each other? Just a verbal thank you, like actually approaching that person goes a long way. And then we really focused on how we would motivate people to join social events. A big hurdle, we think, is the travel and not having social events close to either or office. We have one person from Butler, so that's they're not going to drive all the way to Robinson after a long work day. Or also just having a social event like in each office on the same day so everyone can kind of participate. More interest-focused social events. Someone mentioned ski trips, which sounds like a ton of fun. Maybe doing them more frequently as well. So if you can't make it on one date, you can make it the next weekend. Also having social events that families could be involved in is great. I know there's a music or like food truck festival that happens in the summer. I'm not totally sure, I've only been here 3 months. But I think more things like that kind of go on throughout the day are a really good opportunity for more people to kind of filter and enjoy.
Excellent. What I appreciate about that is you were ideating about like, well, what is, right? So what are some of the barriers between maybe people enjoying the social events, and then how do we reduce that barrier, right? How do we get closer to allowing something to feel more palatable or more accessible to more people, right? And the ways in which they want to show up for it, right? Some people want really big social events and some people want more one-on-one conversations. So I love that you were thinking about kind of the collective, right? And certainly the people on the margins, because I do think when we pay attention to the people on the margins, we're paying attention to everyone, right? Everyone then is more connected when everyone feels included. So thank you. Any other suggestions for how do we increase community culture? Yeah.
I think we need a basketball team. I'm jealous when I hear people having like their own like jobs like basketball team and we don't got one. I don't know, softball's alright.
I think this goes back to those affinity groups that they were mentioning, right? So maybe basketball, pick up basketball is one of the affinity groups, right? Depending on yeah.
Oh my gosh. I messaged Katie about this. I think that we should do a PM versus resource kickball game. I think that would be so fun if we can get the project managers to do it. and we can kick their booties.
Why don't you want to pay your own dental bill after this?
So we should upgrade to
Competitive
kickball.
people on the company, we want to have.
Do not challenge Jason Jessup to anything.
Did I,
You will lose.
did I see another hand? Yeah.
And this may be to the affinity groups, but like, I do love that Gateway does so many things, but sometimes I think that like, it doesn't have to be like a big organized, give us all these things for free, like, just have a younger members group within the office and they can meet, maybe they have a small budget, you know what I mean, where it's like, or if you're really, really focused on like LGBTQ issues and you want to get together, like, I think just employee groups in general would be nice. Because then it allows people, if you're not the sports person, you don't have to join the sports group. There's a group for you too, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Many, many funnels to get people engaged and involved, especially when you see, right, and I see this all the time at my organization, right, there's major generational gaps, right? Not everyone is motivated or inclined to do what other folks need to do, and so you're going to need to have multiple outlets to get people engaged and involved. Awesome. Well, great suggestions. One last one for this group?
And we can do more happy hours.
More happy hours more often. I love it. All right, we got 2 more groups. Who would like to go next?
Communication. We had a ton of ideas. I think the most overarching idea was just like a really transparent hierarchy. We have that already structurally, but within project teams, making sure that the PMs are fully transparent about like expectations, hours, and as part of that, a lot of us have, I think, encountered as a whole, like being short on hours occasionally, and so having like maybe in part of RAD, there's like an open RAD, where it's like these PMs could use some, you know, pre-work on something, or their team can't handle their current load, so like let's onboard some other people for drafting, and like putting a point person for each of those things, so that way we can kind of self-direct, because sometimes when you ask around, you go and you end up asking 3 times and no one ever gets back to you.
Sure.
And then the other thing that we kind of talked about is just having a either focus area or per project teams group, so that everyone is kind of garnishing information and having those lessons learned internally. Any questions that come up might be applicable to 3 projects, not just 1.
Right.
So just kind of open source knowledge in that way. And then just, I think just understanding your coworkers as people, like with, I think I'm kind of hearing that with every group, but just being able to get to know people, what their goals are, so you can be that support person for your coworkers, both personally and professionally, and then just making sure that you're either assisting in helping them achieve those, or you're going to the PM and saying, hey, actually, I know I'm over like 6 hours, but this person really wants to learn this skill.
Oh, I love
Can we like swap some hours so that we can kind of make that happen?
Absolutely.
I think that's like the big 3 that we had.
The one in the end, I think, is especially important to building that community culture, right? Because when you know that, now you're using that synergy to make it a win-win for everyone involved, right? Mm-hmm. Excellent. Any last ideas for this group?
That last bit like really goes a long way, because that happened for me. Someone was like, I had talked to them, like not like a PM, but like another resource, like, oh, like I'm low, and she was like, oh, you know, like I have this response letter that I don't have time for, like I can ask if like this PM will allow you to do it, and then me doing that response letter allowed me to get in that PM's brain, and now I get more consistent work from that project manager. So just having like almost like a reference, another resource reference is like super helpful, and yeah, it's great.
Well, last but not least, what's this team want to share about enhancing relationships with clients?
Okay, as if you guys haven't already heard me talk enough. We're Challenge 3, enhancing relationships with clients, and we talked about a lot of stuff. We did providing better quality with QA, QC, different things like that, fixing mistakes. Like it's okay to make a mistake if, say, the client changes an expectation, but just making sure that everyone knows not to make that mistake again. and taking ownership if you do make a mistake. Valuing all clients, no matter the size of the project. So I know we have some really big clients and some kind of smaller clients, just valuing them all the same. Prioritizing the client's needs, because that switches from client to client. We also talked about within like maybe the IT department, like they could keep up communication. Okay, I didn't suggest it. This was the IT department suggesting it.
All I was saying is that like
Okay, sorry, not department, IT person, singular.
I'm saying how like you guys are like our clients, so like us keeping you like with the progress of your issue or keeping you in the loop is like our way of doing what you guys do to clients.
Yeah, ditto.
Preach.
Yeah. And then also PM training and development, because they're the ones that primarily talk to the clients. Updating the website for communication wise. And then also upholding personal relationships such as golf outings and fun stuff to make the clients like us. So yeah, go the extra mile, quick service. Yeah, I think that's communicate if deadlines won't be met, different things like that. But that's great. Yeah.
So I know we're at time, so I am just going to ask you, as you leave today, to think about one thing you would like to do, right? Go back to that question that I surfaced earlier, which is, how do I help contribute to this environment? One commitment you'd like to make out of anything you heard, or maybe something that surfaced in your small groups, right? That you feel is both accessible, not additive, but a different way that you might connect, grow, iterate, right? Respond, right? Be a part of the culture that helps trigger said behaviors. So thank you all for your time. I really appreciate it. I will definitely be around if you have any questions, but wishing you all just a lovely restorative holiday and hope to see you soon.